Hey, magical experimenters. Thought I would do a spontaneous live video day. I'm going to be doing one tomorrow, like I usually do, but I thought I would do one today. And if you haven't seen my videos before or you're not a subscriber, click the subscribe button and then click on the bell so you get notified when I go live or when I upload videos. So today I wanted to talk about the importance of allowing your life to settle after you've gone through some changes, whether magical or mundane, because I think this is something that's not said enough. I mean, we have a tendency to kind of go, 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 and I'm definitely one of those people. In fact, I can point to that fact because, like in August of 2020, just this last year, I had some big changes come into my life, and instead of doing the smart and sensible thing of taking some time off and allowing my life to settle and process, I ended up escalating things even further and I didn't give myself time to settle, and it created a lot of chaos and havoc. Eventually I did because I kind of had to, but it was not a fun period of my life. um, and what prompted this today really is the fact that I was reading a comment from somebody who was basically saying, I've gone through this change of jobs, and I'm trying to kind of figure out what to do. And I said, my advice is just give yourself some time to settle. Give yourself some time to just be in this new experience of having switched from a stressful type of job to a different type of job. You don't have to change anything. I think that I think sometimes, when we've manifested change in our lives, whether it's through a mundane process or a magical process or a combination thereof, there's this tendency to think, well, you have to keep doing things. You have to keep doing the work. You have to keep doing all the things and et cetera, et cetera. And I would recommend that you don't. I would recommend that you give yourself some time to fully allow the changes that you've chosen to manifest in your life to steep in your life and to be present with those changes. Let's say you decide to get married, for example, or you break up in a relationship, or you get a new job, or you do something else along those lines. What you want to really give yourself a chance to do is actually make space for those changes. And from someone who admittedly has not always done that, I can tell you the reason why we don't. I can tell you why I haven't anyway. I mean, I can't tell you why you haven't, but I'm going to tell you why I haven't and why I think other people haven't. I think that often as not, we're uncomfortable with being still with ourselves. We're uncomfortable with fully accepting a change. And the reason we're uncomfortable with it is because it's causing us, any change brings with it an upswell of emotions, of memories, of whatever else. Let's say you leave a job that you didn't like working at, but you like some of the people there. You're gonna feel freedom because you're done with the job, but you're gonna feel some sadness at leaving some of those people behind. You're gonna feel some other things. And if you're not fully comfortable with those kinds of processes, it can create an destabilizing dynamic in and of itself, because you've created this change, and now you're having to actually be present with the consequences of that change. We talk about results a lot in magic. Like, okay, here's the result you want to manifest. What we don't talk about as much are the consequences. And there's no such thing as a result that doesn't have a consequence. Now, when people think of the word consequences, they usually attach a negative label to it. And I'm going to tell you that that's simply not true. Consequences can be positive as well as negative. Really, it's how you, it's not even the consequences are positive or negative. It's your take on them that's positive or negative. Consequences just are what they are, and it's how you choose to label or categorize it. And perhaps the best thing we can do is learn not to label or categorize, our experiences, instead of saying, this emotion is this or whatever else, or this experience is bad, or what have you. Maybe what we should just say is, here's the experience and let me be present with it. In the next nonfiction book I'm going to be writing, Inner Alchemy of Emotions, I'm going to be talking about this in a lot more depth because in my own work in the last few months, I've really found it valuable to stop associating specific categories of positive or negative, good or bad, or anything else with the experiences that I'm having. Instead, I've just focused on here's the experience and I'm going to be present with it because it is what it is. And instead of trying to work that experience or process it in a certain way or do something else, I've just focused on being in the experience. I focused on settling into the experience and allowing the experience to unfold and teach me. And I think as magicians, we need to learn how to do this. As human beings, we need to learn how to do this. Yet we're constantly egged on to be doing the next thing. You got to do this. You got to do that. For me, I think one of the most refreshing things that I did is in September, I took a month off from doing anything that was related to my magical practice, and I just let things settle. And then when I started back up for October and November, I really just focused on doing the practice without necessarily trying to accomplish anything. I wasn't looking for specific results. I was more focused on just settling into the experience again of the work and letting that work speak through me. And then, in December and January, I started to move back toward a more active process, and I'm working that process now. But one of the biggest lessons that I came away with from this last year is that I need to build in periods of just being with the changes that I've created. If I've decided to manifest a major change in my life in whatever way I have, I need to make time for that change to just let it settle. And I would recommend that to anyone else. Like, if you're going to do this amazing work that is going to transform your life and transform your place in the universe and transform perhaps the lives of other people as well, maybe maybe you should give some weight to the notion of let that work settle. Let us be present. So how do we settle? Well, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to recognize that we don't have to continue to do the work, that we can take a moment to take a pause, that we can take a break, that we can give ourselves a period of rest. I think it's worthwhile to spend some time being reflective. Reflect on this change that you manifested. Reflect on the things that are coming up and don't attach any values or categorizations or whatever. Just reflect on it and be with it. What is it that has changed? Who have you become? Is this what you really want? And if it is what you really want, how can you move forward in a very intentional way with it so that it actually shows up in your life in a very positive manner instead of in a negative way? These are the things that I think are worthwhile. And I know I just said, get rid of categories and I said the positive and negative. But I mean, let's be honest here too. At a certain point, we also have to look at like, how do we want this to show up in our life? That's just the truth. We first learn to be present with the experience, and then at a certain point, once we've become present with it and we've really thoughtfully reflected on it and thoughtfully considered it, that's when we move forward and take action. And I think there's a very real difference between that and just reflexively doing something just because you're like, okay, I've gone and I manifested this change and now I've got to react to it. That's not necessarily positive change, even if a positive outcome comes out of it. It's just a change where you've reacted. And as someone who advocates for not reacting as much as possible, which I really do, I can tell you that I've definitely been there, done that, where I've manifested some changes in my life, and then I've reactively continued the work or reactively focused on something instead of giving myself that space and presence to just be and that time to let things settle and then proactively consider, here's where I want to go. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm going to manifest in my life and change. So it is worthwhile to build that into your magical practice and really into your mundane activities. It doesn't matter what you're doing in your life. This isn't just a good idea for magical work. It's a good idea for life in general. And some of you might say, well, Taylor, that's great, but like, let's say my life is super hectic. I work at a demanding job. I do all these other things or whatever else. How do I make that space and time? Well, my answer to that is stop doing some of the stuff that you can normally do in life. Make time to just be. Like, let's say you work at a stressful job. You work 60 to 80 hours a week. Fair enough. You have to be on the go for that job. But when you're not on the go for that job, settle in. Give yourself some time. Read a good book, do some meditation or whatever. But don't necessarily do it with a specific outcome in mind where you're trying to accomplish something. Oh, I'm trying to achieve this. No, just do it for the sake of doing it, for being in the experience, and let it just carry you. This is a lesson I've had to learn again and again and again in the last few years. And I don't know if it's just because I'm a quote unquote slow learner or something. I don't think so. It's just, I think it's something that's so foreign to people in general. Certainly it's foreign to people in the US. I'll put it that way. Because I don't want to make an assumption for the call for people in other parts of the world. I don't know. But I think, at least in the US, in my experience, it's very much a case where you always are on the go, you always are doing something, you always are actively working on something, and if you're not seen as being productive. Well, that puts a lot of stress and expectation and pressure on a person, and it can be very damaging. And this is something that I've come to learn. And so in the last few years, to some degree or another, one of the things that I've learned to do is to let go of the need to do and to sometimes just be in the experience. And these have been some painful experiences, I'll tell you. I mean, 2017, it was realizing at a certain point that no matter what I did, I wasn't going to be able to change the experience of my businesses going out of business at the time. I was going to have to go and get a job. And eventually I just surrendered to it. And for a good 6 months with that job, I just focused on working on that job and reading and reflecting. And it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. It was an uncomfortable experience. There were times I really didn't like it. But in retrospect, I realized that it was one of the first times that I had ever really given myself a chance to just rest and reflect. And when I was ready, I got into self publishing and I started writing books and everything else. And lo and behold, I worked my way out of that job. And what I didn't do is after I worked my way out of that job, I didn't stop. I didn't reflect. I didn't give myself the time off that I should have given myself until I forced myself to have to take that time off. Now, now I think one of the things that I've learned is, like, for example, when I finished writing a book, I usually give myself the next day off. Unless I'm feeling really inspired, but if I am feeling really inspired, it's usually then to work on, I'll do some art or I'll do something else. I try to do something different from the act of writing, because I've realized that I need to give myself time to just let that experience finish out. I finished writing, I finished creating, and now I need to let it settle. So, in your own practices, magical, mundane, artistic, or otherwise, give yourself time off. You don't always have to be on. And in fact, the best thing you can do for yourself to be more creative or productive or whatever else, is to actually know when to settle into the experience, when to let things just come to a conclusion, dissipate, and make sense of what is there. And then from there, start your next project, your next activity, your next change. And in the cases of life events, whether it's getting a new job or starting a relationship or ending one or whatever else, do the same thing. Give yourself that space and time to just be. It's hard, it's uncomfortable a lot of the time. Even when it's a positive change, it's uncomfortable. But if you just give yourself that space and that time, you're giving yourself a chance to fully be present and to learn, to rest and reflect. You're giving yourself a chance to just be. And I think that is one of the most important skills that we have forgotten how to implement in our lives and in our practices. So, thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow because I am going to do another one tomorrow. I don't know what time, but it'll probably be sometime in the afternoon. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other.